What is the single most divisive, most debated Space Marine kit of all time? The single unit that has caused the most angry discourse, comments, and arguments on blog posts and Facebook groups across the world? I would argue it is 12 years ago with the release of this kit. Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle. I absolutely adore the Centurion warsuits. It's by far my favorite Space Marine unit, and that is an opinion not shared by too many people, although we're out there. Kirioth, my man. I adore the Centurions. At the time in 2012 when they came out, the popular meme at the time was, Games Workshop has made a Space Marine inside of another Space Marine. Which is true, it's a fair criticism, but I think it totally misses the point behind what makes the Centurions so awesome. And if you don't like the look of the Centurions, take a look at my Centurions, because I think I've figured out some subtle conversion work that makes them absolutely perfect. And that is what I'm gonna be doing to this squad right here. I've also magnetized every single weapon option, which I think is kind of essential on a unit like the Centurions. There's something of an endgame Space Marine unit. After you've collected your entire army, then you add the Centurions, because they're very expensive, both in points and in dollars, and maybe you don't see them that often because a lot of people don't like the look of them. But I think magnetizing, which is tricky on a small kit like this, is essential to get your money's worth. I am more than ready to bring my Centurion squad up to full strength with another 3 battle brothers. Come along with me as I kit bash, convert, modify, and magnetize, in my opinion, the best, worst Space Marine unit. Another thing I love about the Centurion warsuits is how absolutely dense the sprues are. I could screen my mac and cheese with one of these things. Clipping the parts off this sprue is like returning home. This is one of the most parts-heavy kits Games Workshop has ever made, and it's a dual kit, both Devastator with all the weapon options and Combat with the drills. This will be the last time I ever build this kit, so I'm savoring every snip. This kit's my happy place. Now I've got everybody laid out in nice neat little piles. The next step is going to be scraping off most of the decorations. And the reason I'm gonna do that is because of my interpretation of the Centurion warsuits. I think these things are video game power-ups. Space Marines, there's not that many of them, and they're all about quick, fast surgical strikes. And every now and then, they get pinned down by overwhelming firepower and they can't progress in their mission. And in those situations, they call down a drop pod. It slams into the earth, and then some Space Marines run up to it, hop in, and then they hop out in Centurion armor. Then they just walk through the hail of gunfire and laser blasts and missiles, just walk right up to the enemy, and then they just dump all their ammunition, taking everybody out. And by that time, the Centurion warsuit is pretty trashed and out of ammo, so then they just hop out and they continue on their way. It's basically like when Mario gets the star and the music gets all fast. That's what I'm going for with my Centurions. It's a bit of a chore to scrape all the decorations, but in my opinion, it makes these suits look much better, much more utilitarian. These things can't take cover, they're always getting shot to pieces, so the tech adepts don't waste their gold leaf and embellishments on these walking tank suits. I got 90% of all the gubbins off with my hobby knife, and then got them smoothed with the sanding twig, one of my favorite little hobby tools. They let me get the sandpaper into all those hard to reach spots. Now the biggest difference you'll see from the Centurions in the Games Workshop web store versus the really cool artwork is that the artists tend to really bulk up and lengthen the legs. And that is the most important thing for making the Centurions look a lot more intimidating and imposing. It all comes down to the legs, and the most important piece of conversion comes to the crotch. Right now they have a Space Marines bulge, but it makes the legs look a little too weeny. I want a dreadnought-sized bulge. So I start making a little chip right in the middle of the crotch, and this will get my hobby saw started. And then I start sawing right down the shaft until the legs are in 2 perfect halves. Now I want to increase the thigh gap, so I took some plastic I had laying around and traced out the Centurion's bulge. Now that I have this shape, I cut it out 3 times for each Centurion, and I super glued these into position, stacking them one on top of another, so now each warsuit has 3 times the bulge. Now the legs are perfect, but Centurions have this wonky little piece of pipe that makes up the reinforced hips, so I need to account for the extra junk in the trunk. I took a hole punch and made some little plastic discs to fill in the new gap on this piece, and that is the perfect underpants for a Centurion. Their crotches have been bulged. Don't worry, there's more work to be done on the crotches a little later on, but now it is time to get their feet onto some bases. I took my knife and made a little dent in the middle of each football. I drilled some holes to pin these guys at the bases. Because I weakened the legs with all the modifications, I think it'll be best to have some reinforcements keeping their feet stuck. I inserted some paper clips and prepared the bases. I have some wood chips already on here, and I filled up the extra space with milliput. This is a 2-part sculpting epoxy, and these bases I'm actually going to be doing a little sculpting. I squished this in between the wood, smoothing them out with my finger, and then I took a piece of cork and squished this into the clay. This pushes it around and I can extend the shape and texture the wood chip gives me into the clay so the wood becomes convincing rock formations. I drilled right through the bottom of the feet and then made up some green stuff. Green stuff dries rubbery with a little give, so it'll be perfect here to extend the robo ankles of these Centurions. And the paper clip will keep the pressure off the plastic. I figured out where my holes should go and then I drilled right through the bases. A little super glue and these Centurions now stand as strong as they look. Now extending the ankle means that these pistons aren't long enough anymore and don't reach the sockets, so I clipped off the peg and then just glued them back there. They're touching tech, so it still looks right. I finished off these bases with a little wood glue and some sand. I like a few pebbles, a sprinkle of coarse, and a dunking of fine grained sand. Now for the leg coverings, right now they're one part, but I need to make that seam a real seam by cutting them apart carefully. It's important to go one by one on this step, otherwise you have a whole pile of plates that are impossible to tell apart. I used green stuff to stick these on as they're attaching slightly lower than they were originally meant to sit, and this hides all the green stuffing I did. The legs are getting so close, just a little bit of height, a little bit of width makes them perfect. And the cherry on top brings us back once again to the crotch. The crotch armor of the Centurions is nice, but in my opinion, it hides too much of their hip region. It doesn't give the Centurions an imposing figure. So what I like to do is I cut off the leg pieces and then turn these into a single crotch guard. A ball of green stuff and some super glue lets this small piece do the job. It's not always about size, it's more about how you use it. Those hips don't lie. Those are some perfect Centurion legs. That is the bulk of the modeling done for these guys. Now comes the slightly tricky task of magnetizing all the options. Every gun is key to a specific arm, so it's important to go one arm at a time, finishing all its guns before moving on to the next one. Now, I'm not gonna magnetize every single option, although I could. I'm gonna be leaving the grab guns on the sprues. I probably don't need to magnetize the bolters, but I'm gonna do it anyway because just the insane number of dice that they can roll, just the opportunity to do something like that is gonna mean that I magnetize these. But what my army really needs is las cannons and siege drills. Las cannons for the anti-armor and the siege drills for the anti-armor, and the siege drills also have another option on top of that, Melta or Flamer. Now, Melta plus Siege Drill is an amazing 1-2 punch that'll probably kill anything in the game. However, I think the Centurions are a prime target to get tar pitted. Just throw a whole bunch of Orc Boys or Termagants at them and keep them locked there for the entire game, not letting them do what they need to do. And so I think the Flamers, in addition to being the cheaper option, are the better option because up to 18 auto-hitting wounds is gonna make them not such a valuable target to be tar pitted. And so I think that Flamer plus Siege Cannon is the move. I started a little dent where I want the magnet to sit on these weapons, and for the magnets, the only thing that'll fit are these little 1.5 by 1.5 millimeter cylinder magnets. Using such small magnets means each gun will need 2 to keep them holding on. I drilled my 1.5 millimeter hole going very slowly and carefully. There is basically no room and I can see the plastic being stressed. Then I shoved in my magnets, making sure they're polarity matched. And then to see where my magnets need to sit on the arms, I put a drop of blue paint on the center of each magnet, then squish the 2 pieces together, and this shows me exactly where I need to drill my holes. The next part is the most important, double checking the polarity so the magnets will actually hold. Listen to this. That's the sound of perfect magnetization. 2 magnets per bit. That means about 40 magnets in total. This does not look like 40 magnets to me, so I'm just gonna work until I run out. Any of the arms fit on any of the torsos, so I made sure I had some combinations that were different from my last Centurion squad. Whew, 24 magnetized bits. That took a minute. Holy cow. I actually had enough magnets, and now I get to glue these guys together, pose them, and get them nice and battle damaged. And to get these suckers even taller, I pinned the torsos and put more green stuff in their guts, and another little ball to lengthen their necks. Now their heads actually stand taller than their shoulders, which makes them look heroic and not squatty. Now for battle damage, I made some dents with my hobby knife and used the tip of my drill bit to make some blast craters in their armor. I made many dents randomly all over to show the incredible wear and tear these suits take. My Centurions are so close to being done. The only thing left is to paint them, the easy part. I have my old Centurions for reference, and I'm gonna be doing the same thing, half black, half white, just like a black and white cookie. Look to the cookie, Elaine. Look to the cookie. And I could just copy exactly what I did before, but I want these guys to turn out even better. So I'm gonna be changing the recipe just a little bit. I primed the Centurions black and then gave them a Zenithal, which might seem like an odd step for black Templars, but this is my new way of base coating my Templars. It has taken me years to find every paint I prefer for my Black Templars, and today's sponsor lets me have them all within easy reach. Cobalt Keep, makers of the finest miniature bases around, has just launched their latest Kickstarter campaign, the expandable hobby and paint rack with modular shelves. These sexy storage units hold your paints in attractive tiers, allowing you to easily see and grab whatever color you need. They have sent us prototype copies of the hobby racks, and they feel very robust, made of sturdy ABS plastic. And the production models feature gorgeous clear paint holders that give you a perfect view of your colors. What makes these paint shelves unique is they feature magnets that allow the shelves to be easily swapped in and out while being held securely for easy transport. Have all the colors you need ready at a moment's notice. The two inserts are 4-slot and 5-slot shelves that fit all the standard paints us war painters have in our collection, and the campaign features stretch goals for even more modularity and storage options. Cobalt Keep's Kickstarter is live now. If having your paint collection organized and accessible sounds good to you, follow the link in the description below to check out the campaign for yourself. With the old Centurions, I masked and airbrushed to get that 2-color effect, but the new way I paint Templars is with contrast paint. A mixture of Black Templar, Leviathan Blue, and plenty of thinner gets me the exact right color, and I can just paint this on. No blue tape or silly putty required. Anywhere I thought didn't get dark enough, I gave a second or third coat of this mixture, wiping it on and then feathering it out with a clean paintbrush. The contrast paint adds a lot of contrast, but the white Zenithal half is still crisp and clean. Nothing little black wash can't fix. I picked out all the metal bits with a bright silver paint, and while that was drying, I got ready to apply some decals. These shoulders are so big, I can fit 3 Templar symbols across them. I coated the shoulder with gloss paint to fill in any surface imperfections, then slid the decals on using Microsol and Microset to get them perfect. Then 2 coats of gloss paint on top to hide the plastic edge of the transfers, and then matte medium on top. Now with the armor all done, it was time for weathering, and I want these guys destroyed. I sponged on more silver, making tiny little chips everywhere, with some micro scratches, making tiny little lines all over, using a dark gray over the white half and a light gray over the black half. Then I washed all the metal with a black wash. And moving on to the bases, giving them an airbrushing of some very watery Vallejo earth, which I also brushed on the legs to show the dust kicked up by their titanic feet, and a dry brushing of tan. I glued on their power plants I'd left off to make it a little easier to paint the seam, and then it was time for the eyes. I used many layers of red to get bright, glowy red eyes. Mwah! Oh, I love Centurions, and they're just about done. I actually sort of rushed the painting a little bit towards the end because I was trying to get them done in one live stream. By the way, we live stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Central Time. Come hang out to see some live painting and some hobby chatter. The only thing left to do on these guys is every single weapon option, which shouldn't take too long because recently I've discovered a new way I like to paint Templar guns. Now that I zenithal my Templars, I can take advantage of it to speed up the guns, and I paint them yellow now. I washed all the guns with a black wash and then a dry brushing of silver paint, and even though most of these guns are just shades of gray, the dry brushing will make it look like they are all metal, with some yellow paint on the receivers and a wash of orange ink. Then a dry brushing of white paint to desaturate them just a little bit. Now they snap perfectly on, and not only do these suits need a little black base rim, but they also need some names. Our top tier patron supporters get immortalized as members of the Black Templar Legion. Now before I introduce these new battle brothers to the crusade, I want to remind you all where we started. The Games Workshop Centurions. Squatty, squishy diamonds in the rough. With just a little or a heck of a lot of cutting, sanding, and gluing, they have now become thick, big, strong boys. Introducing Alexandros P, Dano, and you know who you are, who's been begging for this tutorial for months now. Your name will go here. Welcome to the chapter. I had 3 Centurions built, painted, ready to go, and really that's as many as anybody needs, but now I have 6 absolutely sexy Space Marine Centurions, and that is awesome. I have finally unlocked spam. I love spam, I eat spam all the time, but now I can experience spam on the tabletop. And who knows, maybe one day I'll finally clip off those gravity guns and get those magnetized and use those weapon options too. Thanks for watching.